Good afternoon, it's Wednesday, December 7. I'm Anthony Lugg with the Midday News. A special welcome if you're watching on onespotmedia.com. General Secretary of the People's National Party, PNP, Dr. Dayton Campbell, says a decision has not been made on whether or not the matter of Norman Horne's refusal to resign from the Senate will be taken to court. Dr. Campbell says the party hopes for an amicable conclusion to the matter. He outlined the PNP's position today on the morning agenda on Power 106.
We'll cross that bridge when we get there. We're currently in discussions with Mr. Horne, and we hope that the business of Jamaica will get underway and that there will be an amicable resolution of the matter and that, we'll all carry on with our contribution.
The PNP has given Mr. Horne the option of either following through on his public declaration to give up the seat and send a letter of resignation to the Governor General, or indicate whether he intends to be sworn in as Senator. Mr. Horne has indicated that he will give his answer to PNP President Mark Golding by the end of the week. He has been thrown into the spotlight after Mr. Golding's appointment of Peter Bunting as a senator hit a roadblock on Friday when it was discovered that there was no vacancy as Mr. Horne's appointment was still in force. The Integrity Commission has recommended that the local government ministry initiate an investigation into protocols and standard operating procedures at the Hanover Municipal Corporation in relation to the signing of checks. This follows a probe by the Commission's Director of Investigations into allegations of impropriety and irregularity in the signing of checks by former Mayor of Lucy Shernette Horton in relation to a contract to construct a drain adjacent to the Lucy Transport Center. More from Janella Precious.
The Director of Investigations concluded that there was insufficient evidence to corroborate allegations against Ms. Horton that she demanded $200,000 in exchange for the signing of checks in favor of the contractor. However, the Director of Investigations concluded that the then Hanover Parish Council deliberately splintered the contract. As a result, the direct contracting procurement procedures were applied rather than the limited tender procurement procedures. The limited tender procurement procedures would have required the parish council to invite at least 3 registered contractors to provide quotations. In a report tabled yesterday in the House of Representatives, the Director of Investigation said with regards to the deliberate action by the Hanover Parish Council to splinter the contract, the local government ministry should immediately ensure that officers of the Hanover Municipal Corporation abide by the procurement guidelines. It has also been recommended that the accountable officers at the municipal corporation take a more proactive role in implementing risk management systems. The Director of Investigations says this will prevent undue influence by members of the political and administrative directorate who are required to sign checks.
Health Minister Dr. Christopher Tufton says his ministry will be engaging with the people of Westmoreland to stem the rise in COVID-19 cases in the parish. The health minister told Parliament yesterday that the parish could see tighter restrictions if people do not obey the COVID protocols. Dr. Tufton says the authorities believe the increase in cases is being triggered by careless behavior such as illegal parties and wakes.
Team, we will be engaging the communities of Westmoreland in a further series of activities. We will make interventions at the Negril Bus Park, in the capitals, Savannah Lamar and Petersfield, and we will again try to encourage all persons in the parish to adhere to the protocols.
He says the ministry has been doing a number of activities in the parish to increase awareness and to stimulate behavior changes. The activities include testing in several communities.
3 community interventions over the last 2 weeks. In the capital, Savannah Lamar, 104 persons were tested with 13 positives. In Little London, 102 persons were tested, 19 of whom returned positive results. In Grange Hill, 100 persons were tested, 16 of whom were found to be positive, which gives us a positivity rate, Madam Speaker, of 15%, which is a bit higher than the national average.
Over the last month, the number of confirmed cases in Westmoreland moved from 245 to 460. In the last 2 weeks, over 100 new confirmed cases were recorded. And the government is seemingly contemplating stricter measures for the western section of the island. It comes as data from the Health Ministry have revealed an increase in COVID-positive cases in those parishes. O'Shane Masters reports.
A subcommittee established to review and manage reports of COVID-19 cases across the country is contemplating adjustments to the health protocols for the western end of the island. The committee consists of the Ministry of Health, members of the Cabinet and other stakeholders. In recent weeks, St. James, Trelawney, Hanover and Westmoreland have seen a spike in COVID-19 cases. State Minister in the Ministry of Education, Youth and Information, Robert Morgan, says the committee is expected to make a decision soon. He adds that the government is also working on a COVID management system, which is expected to better manage COVID-19 across the island.
If they do make a decision on the western parishes, it will be communicated to the public after the committee meets. As it relates to the COVID management system, you would also note that the Prime Minister recently announced that it is coming soon. There is a lot to be done in terms of ensuring that the system is effective, ensuring that it is fair, and ensuring that it can be held with the highest level of accountability. I know that the Ministry of Local Government and several other stakeholders, including the police and others, are working on the system, so I cannot say to you definitively that it will be finished in December.
Meanwhile, there will be an increased police military presence on the streets to enforce the health protocols. The move is part of efforts to prevent a spike in COVID-19 cases after the festive season. Persons caught flouting the protocols will be sanctioned. It's why Mr. Morgan is urging citizens to observe the health and safety measures in place for the season.
The fight against COVID is something that we all must work towards. It will impact us individually from an economic perspective, from an educational perspective. So it is in our best interest not just to depend on the police or to depend on the army to enforce, but for us to enforce within our own homes and in our own communities. The police will not be everywhere, neither can the army. So we as citizens have a role to play in telling what we know. If we see something happening that places the community at risk, we have an obligation to report it. And we will take action as a government. The police will take action as law enforcement.
Mr. Morgan was speaking at a post-cabinet press briefing this morning. O'Shane Masters, TVJ News.
And COVID-19 death toll has increased to 266. A 60-year-old man from Kingston and St. Andrew is the latest to die from the respiratory illness. Meanwhile, Jamaica's COVID-19 case count has increased to 11,369. The Ministry of Health says 98 new cases were recorded yesterday. Their ages range from 6 to 95 years. Most cases were recorded in Kingston and St. Andrew, followed by St. Catherine and Westmoreland. 89 persons have been hospitalized. 7 of them are critically ill. And it's now time for a break. Stay with us. More stories when we return. Welcome back. Continuing the news. Opposition MP Michael Phillips has tabled a motion for the removal of the Queen as the head of state and Jamaica to become a republic. Speaking in Parliament yesterday, Mr. Phillips says credible opinion polls have indicated that a majority of Jamaicans would prefer that the country adopt a republican instead of a monarchical system of government.
While there are different views on some recommendation, constitutional amendments, both political parties in Parliament have agreed that Jamaica should become a republic within the Commonwealth with a non-executive president as the ceremonial head of state.
Mr. Phillips has recommended that a committee be established to undertake a 6-month public education program on Jamaica becoming a republic.
Thereafter, hold a national referendum to approve the necessary constitutional changes, and be it further resolved that as a cost-saving measure, the said referendum be conducted at the same time as the local government election, which is due on or before February 2022. And be it further resolved that Jamaica takes these immediate steps to finally repatriate this fundamental symbol of Jamaican sovereignty, the head of state, to our homeland, Jamaica, land we love, prior to our celebration of 60 years as an independent nation.
Earlier this year, Barbados announced plans to sever ties with the British monarchy. Guyana became a republic in 1970, less than 4 years after gaining independence from Britain. Trinidad and Tobago followed its suit in 1976 and Dominica in 1978. Local Government Minister Desmond McKenzie says the National Solid Waste Management Authority, NSWMA, is working overtime to ensure that garbage is collected during the busy Christmas season. Mr. McKenzie says more waste than usual is generated at this time of the year.
The National Solid Waste Management Authority is already implementing late-night operations in many communities. In some communities, they are working 24 hours. The dump is open 24 hours a day, Madam Speaker. They are employing additional sweepers, and they are making sure that all the areas, the public spaces across the country is adequately swept and the garbage, Madam Speaker, collected and taken to the disposal site.
He says citizens also have a role to play in garbage disposal.
It makes no sense, the entity putting these measures, but the response from the Jamaican people is, boy, I'm in a business. There has to be, at this time, a sense of responsibility coming from Jamaicans in how they dispose of their garbage, Madam Speaker.
And Executive Director of the NSWMA, Audley Gordon, says his agency has cleared approximately 80% of the garbage backlog in the parishes of Kingston and St. Andrew and St. Catherine. He provided the update at this morning's post-cabinet press briefing.
We are down to moving from 200 loads approximately to we are about 20 plus loads now. So we are moving in the right direction to clear up the backlogs. Coming into this week, we were looking at a timeline of midweek. I need to get the update when the backlogs will be cleared and we'll be back on level clear. We commit to a clean Christmas for Jamaica.
Security consultant Robert Finzi-Smith is renewing the call for persons to take extra precaution when entering vehicles purporting to be taxis.
People need to take note of the registration plate of the vehicles they get into. And if you want to make sure that people don't try games with you, you get into the vehicle and you do so. Yes, mommy, yeah, I'll leave you halfway through now. License number, yeah, okay. What's your name, driver? And if he looks uncomfortable with that, that's not a taxi you're taking.
Additionally, he says people need to trust their instincts.
If it feels wrong, it's wrong, and take the appropriate action. You have people who do not want to be embarrassed. It is better to be embarrassed than to be hurt or deprived of your belongings. If it feels wrong, it's wrong, and take the appropriate action. The appropriate action in every country I've ever been to, thieves use the same language. Don't move, don't make the noise. So make noise and move. Draw attention that something is wrong.
A couple was shot dead at their house in Hayes, Clarendon last night. They have been identified as 34-year-old cosmetologist Ashlatha Coleman and 55-year-old Delroy Bailey. Their children were not hurt. The incident occurred about 11:30. The attackers gained entry through a window. Mr. Bailey's sister says her brother was not involved in any wrongdoing.
Both talk or nothing like me, just attack you out of my mouth like say, my brother a bad man and the man a bad man. You know man a bad man. Somebody can just come kill you in your sleep. I sleep, you sleep, you know. And if somebody shoot you through window, then shoot him, you know. It's really hard. Them the people they kill.
Marcus Garvey Jr., the son of Jamaica's first national hero Marcus Messiah Garvey, died in Wellington, Florida on Tuesday. Garvey, who passed away at age 90, lost his battle with Alzheimer's disease, a condition he had been battling with for several years. Marcus Garvey Jr. in many ways walked in his father's footsteps, becoming President General of the United Negro Improvement Association, UNIA. He was born in St. Andrew, Jamaica, and spent much of his time touring and lecturing across the Caribbean, North America, Europe, and Africa.
Even before becoming President General of the organization, during his time in Jamaica as a teacher, he had formed an organization known as ANU, which was an African nationalist organization.
But outside of his passionate activism, Garvey was also a brilliant electrical engineer, physicist, and mathematician.
Famous people in this country. I've often heard Muta Baruka refer to him. I've heard people like Alan Skillcole talk about his time at Kingston Technical and at Kingston College, and other institutions that he taught at, and even his work as an engineer, certainly as a black engineer in those early days, and somebody who had studied engineering up to the level of a PhD to become Dr. Marcus Garvey Jr. I mean, that is one aspect of it.
Marcus Garvey Jr. is survived by his wife Jean Garvey, younger brother Dr. Julius Garvey, sons Colin and Kyle Siku, stepdaughter Michelle Morris, and 4 grandchildren. And here's a preview of what's coming up in this evening's health report.
In the next edition of the health report, we'll look at alcohol consumption during the festive season.
On the individual, alcohol consumption has been associated with high blood pressure, heart disease, strokes, liver disease, digestive problems. It has been associated with cancers, breast cancer, mouth and throat cancer, liver cancer, colon cancer, and it has also been associated with mental health issues, depression and anxiety.
That's the health report this evening in Primetime News. And now for today's Healthy Living tip. Space yourself, count your drinks, don't forget to eat, and don't drink and drive.
In news overseas, Panamanian health authorities on Tuesday instituted a strict nightly curfew for the capital Panama City and surrounding province in a bid to slow the spread of the coronavirus. More from the CNN.
Panamanian health officials on Tuesday put into place a series of measures that they say they hope will prevent a resurgence of the coronavirus here in the capital city of Panama City and the surrounding province. Starting on Tuesday, people will have to stay in their homes. There will be a curfew from 9 p.m. until 5 a.m., and there will be a ban on alcohol sales. These new restrictions come on top of existing measures that prevented people from holding large gatherings in their homes. At the beginning of the pandemic, Panama put into place some of the toughest restrictions in the region. People were not allowed to leave their homes for days. Borders were closed. But since reopening, Panama has seen a steady uptick in the number of cases. In the last several days, we have seen more than 1,000 new cases each day. So officials say that they hope that this will do the job. They will not have to revert to those tougher measures, but they also have not said how long these new restrictions will be in place.
And the House of Representatives is set to vote today on a stopgap funding bill to avert a government shutdown at the end of the week. A short-term bill would provide more time for negotiations on broad legislation for government funding and pandemic relief. Wednesday's bill, known as a continuing resolution, will keep the government funded for just 1 extra week. It extends the shutdown deadline from this Friday to December 18. The expectation is that the stopgap bill will easily clear the House. Then, the Senate will take it up. The longer-term hurdle is passing an omnibus bill, a massive government spending for the new fiscal year. 2 of the sticking points there are immigration provisions and abortion language. To news and sports now. The board of directors at Cricket West Indies could make a decision today as to whether the proposed tour of Bangladesh will go ahead as planned in January. Last month, CWI Director Dr. Ashkaiman Singh, along with security managers Paul Slow, toured stadia and Dhaka in Chattogram and also visited airports, hotels, hospitals, and practice facilities to ascertain their state of readiness. According to reports, both were pleased with proposed arrangements for a managed quarantine bubble. The tour, expected to comprise test and limited overs matches, will be the first international series hosted by the country amid the ongoing coronavirus pandemic. The findings will be presented to the board today. The directors are also expected to discuss the dropping of one test from the tour. And that's the midday news. I'm Anthony Lugg. Join us at 7 for Primetime News. On behalf of the news, sports, and production teams, good afternoon.